and good morning. It's Jim from Maverickstar Observatory. It's nice to be using OBS again, so you can see it's not just a voice, but there is an actual person behind that voice. So great to be here. Well, it is absolutely shocking and stunning, and I don't know what other words to use for what is actually taking place right now in the UK. Chaos would be a good word for what is happening. I'll just give you a little rundown on a few of the things that are causing major problems for everybody, including small businesses, even large businesses. But in general, we're talking about 19 months of COVID-19 pandemic related policies that have seen people lose their livelihoods that they've worked all their lives for, and this Christmas we're facing through Brexit a shortfall. Now they're even using higher numbers than there was before. About a couple of months ago they said there was a 70,000 commercial driver shortage in this country. Now it's gone up to 100, and now they're talking about 150,000 manpower short in the logistics industry. And you can imagine what this effect is going to have on the average everyday person, with regards to what they are accustomed to buying in shops, because even myself would hate to admit that something is going on, and bring some alarmism to those issues, but I've noticed myself things are going missing in the aisles. Some strange things as well, like dairy products. The whole dairy products in Morrison's the other day, the whole aisle had virtually been emptied, and I can only presume that was because they couldn't get delivery drivers. And I know a few people that work in local stores that do a general range of things. They're saying that some of the delivery drivers are not turning up with the goods, and therefore the shelves are having to lay there desolate until something changes. But on the back of this, our government, in particular Boris Johnson, has decided to raise national insurance, deduct £20 off of everybody's benefits, and these are the poorest people in our country that don't even have the equivalent of a minimum wage. He seems to think it's a great idea that just before Christmas to take more off them, increase the taxes, and allow energy companies to put up energy prices when they've already done so in this year alone up to 70%. So they've nearly doubled the energy prices. So it makes me wonder, what sort of Christmas are we going to have in this country now? This is just not related to the United Kingdom. I'm sure that this is reverberating all around the world, and I've heard some horrible stories coming from the United States where there is almost a kilometre of people, probably amounting to the numbers of 100,000 plus, waiting for benefits or waiting for food subsidies, stamps or whatever. This is happening all around the world. It's like we've heavily relied on technology and services like training and things like that, and we just can't get the people now into the jobs fast enough to recover this vacuum of limited numbers of people in specific areas in the industries, such as lorry drivers or commercial drivers. And you can imagine what's going to happen Christmas, can't you? And this will be a global problem. With the pandemic and people still having time off work, some of the desperate measures, I have to mention this because a friend of mine is in the HGV business, and he says that the government have just cut a load of red tape now, so that you don't have to have a Class 2 licence before you can then take the test and start training to be a Class 1 driver. And the difference between the two is 18 tonne rigid is Class 2, up to an 18 tonne I think, and then your Class 1 is articulated lorries. You used to have two tests. Now, to get people into Class 1s quicker, the government have cut the legislation on that licence, so you can go straight for your Class 1 and I really feel sorry for a friend of mine who's just finished his class 2, and that must have come at a cost of around about £1,800 to him. I know he had to do one of the tests again, so you can imagine. Not only is it taking months for people to get into the position to take these jobs on, and they are reasonably well paid. I do know that some class 1 drivers now are getting up to about £33 an hour, which I think amounts to about £60,000 plus a year job, which is not bad. It's almost the same salary as a doctor for driving a commercial lorry. And of course there is lots and lots of people trying to get into those roles where those wages are being paid. But this will be, as everything is the case, a short-term fix for everybody. Even if they do get into those roles, what's going to happen is a little bit later on down the road, when there becomes a surplus, and there will be, because of the hype that is being put on this topic now about a shortage of drivers and the salaries that paying, people are leaving other jobs to train to get into those roles, and it's not going to fix the problem. It's going to actually make the matters worse. Listening to mainstream media, and I don't really pay too much attention to that, there's a speech which is supposed to be one of the main speeches of Keir Starmer's political career taking place today. He's going to be tackling a lot of issues. One of them is a climate crisis, and he's going to be yanging on about CO2, man-made CO2, and the fact that it's caused global warming, and that's why we're experiencing climate change the way they see it and the way they are portraying it. And trust me, there is a great big population of people out there that believe still to this day that global warming is taking place, oceans are rising, and this is a man-made problem, and it's all related to CO2, when really we have put them in checkmate now once and for all on this matter, and they have put themselves in a situation where they can't go back out of it, because they have, as I've been talking about over the weeks and probably last month or so, the fact that flooding across Europe and over the northern hemisphere and some parts of the southern hemisphere, because it's not just the northern hemisphere that is having climatic effects, it's also the southern hemisphere, but they've been talking about the increase and noticeable increase in floods. Now, if we are getting anything dropped from the clouds, there must be something that triggers that. And as I have explained, it is the Arctic air mixing with the tropical air in the jet streams, both those jet streams, both over the northern and southern hemisphere. And of course, when you get that cold air mixed with the humid air, it can't hold on to that amount of precipitation, so it has to fall at that point where it cools and condenses into water droplets. And that's where you get your flash floods, when you get these sharp dislocated polar jet streams come down over Europe, meeting that subtropical warm moist air that's obviously holding a lot of water vapor, and it drops it within hours, and you have like a year's worth of rain in 6 hours, breaking records that go back hundreds of years. Something else that you might have noticed in the news, the La Palma volcano that's erupting and all the houses that it's destroyed. Well, this is, again, like I've been saying, this is a failure of local planning departments allowing people to build on, lava flow paths that may not have erupted in a long period of time, or certainly to the extent that it has done today. But what they've done is been so complacent to think that volcano could never erupt again. And it's the same not just for volcanoes that have, it's destroyed a lot of houses, a lot of businesses. It's still erupting. They don't know how long this can continue erupting, but it could go on for many hundreds of years, even thousands of years. Nobody knows how long it will be before that volcano subsides and stops producing that magma. And you've only got to look on the Antarctic Peninsula, to be reassured that we do live on a world where volcanoes continually are in eruption. But the point is, it's not just planning departments that have allowed people to build and settle in lava flow paths, but we've also had around the world planning departments that have failed their obligation to warn people of the specific dangers of building houses in floodplains and, reclaim land. This is not something that lasts for eternity and gives you security forever. And as a result, we see people losing exactly everything that they've owned. If you live alongside a river and, the levels are low to the river, you've got to expect at some point that you are going to experience flooding. There's somewhere not too far from me here, Bewdley, that regularly floods, and I know that some of the people that live there struggle now to get insurance because of the frequency recently that it's been flooding the River Severn, I think it is. I think what we need to be aware of more than anything now is the risks that we really do face. And if you're buying property, you need to really look at the terrain, at where that property is, study the geology and the history of the geology of that region, and if it is in floodplains, if it is at the bottom of a valley, if it is on the path of a lava flow or on the path of floodplains, then why would you even consider buying it? Even if it's at a premium price, why would you even consider that? Because the next day you could wake up like we've seen recently in Europe, with people having their houses washed literally away. It is real strange times we're in right now. It's not just the war with Mother Nature striking back at us. It is the negligence of human beings on a whole across many ranges that we are seeing so many cracks appear in the system. It just makes me wonder, how close are we to a total collapse? We all know that when a grid goes down over a country through a coronal mass ejection off the sun, which is overdue, just like a lot of other things that are overdue, natural catastrophes that are overdue. I mean, we are on the precipice of going back into a glacial period, and some people get confused with glacial periods and ice ages, but the fact is, technically, we're still in a last ice age. We're still in that ice age. It's the glacial periods that we really need to be concerned of, because glacial periods last for tens of thousands of years, and we know that because we've got the data that shows these cycles have happened before. And if we are so naive to think that these are not going to reoccur again, then it's false hope, because these things show us that they regularly occur, just like that volcano in La Palma regularly erupts. It's just a matter of time when it does, and if your house is in the lava flow path of that lava, which is going to make its way down naturally through gravity to sea level, then your house is going to go up in flames. It is surprising the times that we live in, and the policies that are in place, and the panic of world governments to try and contain these crises as they happen. It just makes me wonder, if we had a CME, or would we even need a CME, because we're seeing the logistics fall apart right now here in the UK, and stuff is limited on shelves. We've had fuel runs at petrol stations which has consumed all the fuel in the petrol stations to the point where they've had to close, and people can't get to work again. So not now due to a pandemic, but down to people panic buying fuel. And if you ask me, it was the government's fault, because they should never have announced the shortage in the drivers that was first of all stopping tanker drivers getting to these fuel stations to replenish the fuel stocks in them, that caused the run on the fuel. And naturally we're all going to panic buy, aren't we? If we've got to keep our jobs, more so at this time of the year because Christmas is coming, then who isn't going to queue up at the fuel station to ensure that they've got fuel to get to work, so that they can keep the household bills being paid? Because we live in a world where if you miss a couple of payments, your house is snatched back off you by the banks, and the government are allowing this to happen simply. Just like, those people that struggled in the pandemic over the last 19 months, that lost their jobs or was unable to do their jobs, lost that regular income and was renting properties, are now being turfed out by the tens of thousands. So we are making right now tens of thousands of people homeless simply because of the pandemic and the failure for the government to support and act at the appropriate times. I've got to say this because I was talking to someone about this the other day, and we're probably not far away from a general election in this country. At some point it's going to happen. I think it'll be a waste of time even if any other of the two parties get a crack of the whip and are successful to be the dominating party. At the moment we've got Conservatives, Liberal Democrats and Labour. And I was saying to my partner this morning, the problem is with Labour and the Labour leader in particular, Sir Keir Starmer, is that he's just way too conservative. He would be better working for the Conservative Party because he just appears way too conservative to be a Labour leader. And in general terms, the Labour leaders have been someone that can reflect the actual people, because that is what Labour is supposed to be, all about the unions and the people, whereas Conservative just seem to inherit when Labour's been in party for a long time, they seem to inherit a healthy country and just wring it to the death and leave it in debt, and a lot worse a situation than what chance has another party got. But my view is on this, it's going to shock a lot of people. I just think we need to get rid of a few things and have a complete new system, because the current system is not working, hasn't worked in the last 50 years, and is going to continue not to work because the changes aren't being made. And a couple of those changes I would make if Her Royal Highness doesn't mind me saying and just speaking freely about this. I think it's time for her to step down and from any active part of any government. And I also believe that the House of Lords should disappear alongside with them, and we should just have a party which is able to bring out new legislation, especially in times of crisis like now, without having to go to the House of Lords to first get it approved, or even having royal assent come down the pipe and affect laws that need to be made and changes that need to be made. My point is this: on a political scale, nothing seems to change anymore, and the system is stagnant and old and dirty and needs a revamp. And I think that is the only thing that is going to reassure public trust in any government that we have here in the UK, and it's probably the same situation for where you are right now around the world. Just moving on before we round up a few things, guys, we are running at a deficit at the observatory. We do need some support. We did have a little bit of support again yesterday, not as much as what we did the day before that. I think we've managed to raise over the last couple of days £300, but in the reality of things, that is a lot. It is far away from the deficit that we've already ran up in this 18 months, due to I suppose people finding just it too difficult to support what we do here, even though they do find it important. So we really need to do a little bit more work. I need some of you guys to step up to that line and support what we've got, because we do genuinely have a deadline where I cannot afford to keep putting in my personal money. I don't mind my time, but my personal money is got a limit now, and that limit is the new year. I would love to continue the service, especially as we're at a point in time where we're 17.4 months away from reaching that important 40-degree mark, where we could see the strong field lines go into the weak field lines, where we get a migration at a much quicker rate. That will affect climate much more faster, and in turn I believe that is the critical point where a lot of things will happen, especially with the climate, and as a result of that, it's going to inevitably affect us all. So I think it's more important to keep an eye, more so now as we are so close. I mean, come on, it's been 100 years of pole migration to this point. In the last 5 months we've seen that increase by a rate of 20%, And we were asking the question here at the observatory, is it because we've passed over or began to pass over the North Atlantic mid-ridge? You know, is that the cause of the increase in distance over time and the increase in the magnetic pole migration? We know roughly where it's aiming for. It's going for central Russia. We don't have any equipment in Russia. We need to get equipment in Russia. We need a muon detector in Russia. We need a magnetometer there. And maybe a couple of other things which would be desirable. But equally, we need equipment in Brazil, and even more so, South Africa, because of the South Atlantic anomaly is splitting into two. And one half is heading towards South Africa and the other is over Brazil right now. And we still don't know what the radiation levels are in Brazil because we just don't have the equipment there. So, I make an appeal to you guys. We need to keep the observatory going, keep the information flowing, and put more equipment out there. And the reason why I say that is because we're at a critical time now where we have got limited time left. We could see the pole get close to the 40-degree mark and then, really start to shift in speed. That is what I predict will happen. And I don't think it has too much to do with the North Atlantic ridge. It could do. We're just doing our best with the equipment that we've got out there in the field to effort these things and give you the information on them. But I'd like to keep it going, but we certainly now at this point need to raise some dough for the observatory to keep it going, because I don't want to shut the doors in January and give up a good 10 years work to this point. So guys, there is a link down there in the description as always. I wish you the best. Take care of your families in these testing times, and I'll say what I usually do. As always, bye for now.